welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast. This is going to be an episode that we did last year and it went fairly well. We are going to be looking ahead to the new season, looking at transfers, looking at the latest contract news. Obviously, there hasn't been too much on that front, but we'll still be looking at that and just kind of talking about where we think Sunderland could be next season and how they're going to line up, essentially. Obviously, it is that time of the year where players are going to get linked from every club in the world to Sunderland. The likes of Cameron Archer has been linked recently, a few others, and obviously waiting on contract talks with the likes of Gooch, Bailey Wright, who's just won the playoffs with Australia. I'm not entirely sure what it was qualifying for. I don't know if any of you know what it was for.
World Cup, wasn't it?
Was it World Cup?
Yeah, World Cup.
Was it? Fair enough. Bailey Wright in the World Cup. 2 playoff wins in the space of a couple of months. Not bad. But like I said, we'll be looking ahead and just looking at kind of Sunderland's starting 11, where we think it could go. Obviously, this is just kind of looking at players that we would like to sign and who we would like to see in them positions. But first and foremost, John, it is, like I said, it is that time of year where everyone's going to get linked. There's going to be players linked with moves away. There already has been, the likes of Ross Stewart linked with Rangers. It's another very important summer and Sunderland have to get it right.
Yeah, it's a big important summer. I think we have touched on it before. We always seem to go into the summers and they always seem to be massive for us, as opposed to just adding sort of 2 or 3 players to an already sort of amazing plan. A lot, like you said, a lot of things are up in the air. Obviously, Bailey Wright, Patrick Roberts and Gooch. Ideally, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. I would have thought that we would probably like all 3 to stay. But even then, we still need, I'd probably go on the maybe 6 to 7 sort of new players coming in. The links of Stewart leaving doesn't fill me with any real confidence, because I think if they do sort of dangle a bit of money in front of us, I think we're the sort of club to go, yeah, we could take that. Because I don't think you can't really put a price on a striker who's banging in goals, who, to be fair to him, has an amazing, injury record. He doesn't, he's played every single game and he's been available for the last 4 Scotland games as well. So I think, we've got to remain quite resilient in that fact. The only other thing is maybe we're in a really good position and we're sort of on the up. That's maybe a selling point to say, look, come on, stay. We can, because we know if we get the things right, and it's a big if, but if we get the things right, we know, we're heading in the right direction up to the Premier League. But yeah, like we say again, it's always a big, I don't want to say rebuild, but it's almost like a rebuild, isn't it?
Yeah. And obviously we're going to mention it at some point, Dylan, but we might as well talk about it now. Obviously, Ross Stewart linked with Rangers. He is probably a player that I think every single Sunderland fan wants to see stay at the club. Obviously, I think, I'm not entirely sure how many goals he got. He got over about 25, 26 goals last season, I think it was. And obviously offered a lot more to the team than just his goals. And obviously it was his goal that produced one of the best moments in recent years at Wembley. But, you've seen the likes of Ivan Toney, who was in a similar situation. Obviously had a great season in League One with Peterborough, and I think it was a £10 million move to the Championship. How much is Ross Stewart worth at the moment? And what would you, if Sunderland did sell him to someone like Rangers, what would the price tag have to be for you to be like kind of fair enough?
Oh, so that's a good question, because obviously on the one hand, he's been absolutely excellent for us. I mean, obviously he's got promoted, and it's quite clear that he's Championship quality at the very least. He's a brilliant striker. But then also, it was only a year and a half ago that we paid 250,000 for him. So if we end up selling him, whatever they sell him for, it's going to be a massive profit. But I mean, if we were to sell him, I would want it to be to a club like Rangers. I don't want to be selling him to anyone else in our league, because I feel like that would just be pointless. We'd probably end up scoring about 7 goals in one half against us in typical Sunderland fashion. I'd say, to be realistic, I'd say upwards of 5 million, but simply because of what he's worth to us, I'd be asking for around the 10 million mark. And if no club's willing to meet it, then that's just tough luck for them, isn't it? They're not getting him.
Yeah. And obviously, Adam, the summer, a lot of people only really focus on who Sunderland should be bringing in, but it is important to keep as many of the players that we have now at the club.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I didn't realise how heavily linked Rangers were to him, but I'm just reading here that's Scott Wilson said that Rangers make SFC striker Ross Stewart their number one option to replace Morelos. Now, I've never seen a striker for Sunderland in the last, say, 15, 20 years that has been so much of a focal point. I think if you go through our previous strikers, Defoe, he's a finisher. Josh Madger, again, finisher. Charlie Wyke just heads it in. Like, Ross Stewart can do absolutely everything, and he looks different class. Like, he looks very clever. And I think the moment I realised it was when we played Wigan away this season, obviously won 3-0. And just while he was waiting for like balls to come in the box, like just his understanding of distances between himself and defenders, himself and fellow players, it's second to none. And I think I get what he's saying about League One and stuff. Like, he's only done it in League One. We only paid a couple of 100,000 for him not long ago, but those attributes and traits that he has, you can't buy for less than 7-8 million in today's market.
Yeah.
And I think
Ivan Toney's the perfect example of that as well. And that was, 3, maybe 4 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing with Ross Stewart is, as a target man kind of thing, the ceiling's not as high as Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney's someone who can like running behind and all. And to be fair, Ross Stewart can. I just think Ivan Toney was always going to be worth about £10 million. Whereas I think a lot of people, apart from Sunderland fans, will look at Ross Stewart and think, how can you expect £10 million for a League One striker? But like I say, to us, as Dylan touched on there, to us, he's worth that. And if we were to sell him for 10 million, we'd probably have to spend 8 million to get someone that's nowhere near as good as him.
Yeah. I think that is fair enough, to be honest. And the other players, obviously, that might leave, might not leave, John, like we've already kind of mentioned, Bailey Wright, Lyndon Gooch, and Patrick Roberts. In terms of Bailey Wright, I think it's fair to have expected this contract talk to have gone on for a while. Obviously, he's been away on international duty with Australia as up till, now. I think he's probably still away with them now. But in terms of Lyndon Gooch and Patrick Roberts, is it a concern that we still haven't heard anything about it yet?
I think slightly, because they're due back in training. What is it, next week?
Yeah.
And obviously they both haven't played, any other football. Unlike, Bailey Wright, you could probably give him the benefit of the doubt, with the internationals. But the other two, obviously Gooch has been training. I've seen the videos, on Twitter and stuff, and he still tags the club in them. So you probably would have thought he's probably going to sign and maybe just keeping his options open. If Swansea, by all accounts, have sort of come in for him, then there's probably a decent contract, and sort of a 2 to 3 year deal there for him. Maybe we're looking at sort of a 1 or a 2 year deal. I think the last time he signed a new contract, I think it wrangled on a little bit. And going up to the Championship, is he a player we want to put 3 or 4 years into? And I'm probably not quite so sure. I'm sure a few of the other boys on the pod will probably hate me for saying that. But it's we could probably do better. But I think the way the squad is, I think he is a player that we do need to sign for sort of continuity. But I wouldn't be handing out a 4 year deal. So you would have thought that. I still think he probably will sign, but I think it's just taking some time. And obviously with Patrick Roberts, I think again he's probably keeping his options open. A few teams would have seen his form towards the end of the season. I don't think he's been scintillating since he came in. It's taken a while for him to get up to speed, but we know if Neil can get him playing how he's been playing, he's probably one of the best players in the squad. So again, I think the ball's sort of in both of them. Both of their court, ours and his. He's probably got a lot of options, I would have thought, and obviously we want him, and he wouldn't cost anything. Whereas if we were buying him, you're probably looking at 5-6 million. Maybe even the same sort of price that Jack Clark would command. But it's one of them. It's up in the air. If they stay, great. If they don't, I'm sure we've got other irons in the fire. But for me, I'd probably take both of them.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into kind of the starting 11 as to what we would like to see as opposed to what we think we will see. But John said 6 or 7, Dylan. How many players do you reckon Sunderland do need to bring in? Obviously, there's a lot of players left Off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to name them, but we're stuck with one keeper, one striker, one left back, and obviously Dennis Serkin. So there are certain areas that definitely need more attention than others. But would 6 or 7 be a fair representation of how many players Sunderland do need to bring in this summer?
Yeah, no, I think around that number would be a good amount of bringing that. It's like, obviously, on one hand, the players that have took us up, some would say give them the chance in the championship. But if we've got the means and the funds to improve on what we've got, then there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. So I think bring in, as you said, 6 or 7, and then see how it does. And then if that's not enough and we need more, there's always January to remedy that. But we've still got some quality players already at the club, so just need a few to bring us up to like solid championship level, as opposed to we could have survived in the championship if we were there last season, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into what we think or what we would like Sunderland's starting 11 to kind of look like next season. And obviously you can name players that have been at the club, name players that are at the club, or players that have been linked with the club, or players who you think would just be a good target for Sunderland. Obviously, we have no idea how much Sunderland are going to have money-wise to spend, but I would recommend not to include the likes of Mbappe and Pogba in this, because I think that is slightly unrealistic, kind of like Joe Bursick. Sorry, Dan. But we'll start with a formation, I suppose. Adam, you can pick a formation that you think Sunderland are probably more likely to go with next season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not sure because, all season under Neil, I don't know how many games he had, about 15, 20. For the most part of the season, we played a 3 at the back.
Yeah.
And then the playoffs comes and he goes for a 4 at the back. Now, one of my good friends is a Preston fan, and he said they never played a 3 at the back under Alex Neil. So, which makes me question, why did he come, play a 3 at the back, and then go at the 4 at the back for, like, you could say the most important games?
Yeah.
Which I found a bit funny. So, I think if we're going based off what he's done before and the fact that the more important games towards the end of the season, I think probably you're looking at a 4-2-3-1, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think the Sunderland situation next season is probably going to be somewhat similar to the expectation he had at Preston as well during the first season. So I think that formation would probably work. So 4-2-3-1 will start in goal, and obviously I'll go through each one of yours, and you can name whoever you want that you think would like to see in goal for Sunderland next season. Obviously, we only have one goalkeeper at the club now, and Anthony Patterson made his debut last season and didn't really put a foot wrong. From start to finish, kept a few clean sheets even there, made some important saves. That one against Oxford, I think it was, which probably proved out to be one of the most important saves of the season in terms of the points we needed to reach the playoffs, which obviously ultimately led to us getting promoted. But John, I'll start with you. In goal for Sunderland next season, does Anthony Patterson start, or would you be bringing someone else in, and who, if so, who?
Do you know what? Personally, I think I would start him. I think you do have to see what would happen. It sounds a strange one, but happens in training. I know there's been a few goalkeepers linked up, and I think Everson, who played for Neil, played for Neil at Preston.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously Ruddy as well, who's probably a good experienced goalkeeper. But I think as we stand at the moment, I'd probably say Pato gets a chance. But obviously, you've got to see what happens in who we do sign. Because by the looks of it, we're trying to sign someone a bit more experienced at a higher level, maybe. But I personally would put Patterson in there and have whoever does come in as the understudy at the moment. But obviously, when in pre-season, it could all change because Patterson was decent in pre-season last season, and then obviously he's ultimately third choice behind Burge and Hoffman.
Yeah. So Patterson for John, with another keeper coming in as backup, Dylan.
Simply because we've been linked with him, I'll say Everson. That if you asked me before I'd seen that those rumours, I would have said that he was probably too good for us to be able to sign. But I mean, he's proven himself, especially last season, as like an exceptional championship goalkeeper. And so if it is true, and we are interested in him, and we've got the financial means to bring him in, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be getting the best player in each position that we possibly can. But I do want to say Patterson has been very good and he does deserve a chance. So if we're in a position to bring in a very good goalkeeper, then maybe you send Patterson on loan to League One. But I wouldn't be against the idea of keeping Patterson as our starting keeper at the start of the season.
Yeah. And Adam, for you, in goal for Sunderland next season?
Yeah, same as what Dylan said. Again, Iverson for me was the best keeper in the league last season, and I think I put onto it. I expect the Premier League club to offer Leicester about 5 million, but
Yeah.
now that he's linked, 100%, either him or Nottingham Forest's number 2, Ethan Horvath from America. Again, he hasn't played much in the Championship last season, but in the half a dozen games that he did play, he was fantastic. And I'll be honest with you, I think we've spent 4 years in League One. I don't want to go up to the Championship and just be too nice to our players, like, oh, well done for last season, you start.
Yeah.
I think we've got to kick on here. And look, Anthony Patterson, for me, he came on leaps and bounds. When he first got put in the team, I wasn't very keen on him. But the confidence that I have in him grew and grew. And, you know, he made that brilliant save at Wembley against Vokes.
Yeah.
But I want this season to be a season that's meaningful and that we can kick on as a club. And I think our best chance of doing that is by getting someone else.
Yeah.
So Iverson or Horvath.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Honestly, that will be a position that Sunderland will sign someone in, who it is, I don't know. But obviously Patterson, like I said, is the only goalkeeper of the club, so that is definitely a signing that will be made. On the right back, Adam, I'll start with you for right back. Obviously, we've got Hume, who hasn't really played under Alex Neil. I think he played in the game against Rotherham, I think it was. And off the top of my head, that's the only game I remember him starting for Neil. Obviously, Niall Huggins, who got an injury and missed, a large part of last season. We've got Winchester on 9 who can play there, but probably not the primary position for them. Who would be starting at right back for Sunderland next season, do you think?
See, so 2 names that I've shortlisted would be Marlon Fossey at Fulham and Callum Britton at Barnsley. But again, them 2 names are probably more lads that you'd play if you were playing a 3 at the back.
Yeah.
I think it's far more difficult to sign. Well, no, that's more difficult. I think just a good right back stands out less than a good right wing back.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you. And I don't know what you lads are like with him because he is Marmite, but I wouldn't be against Luke O'Nien starting right back next season.
Yeah.
I just think he's that solid as a right back. He doesn't make mistakes. And I think if you can have a team of defenders that don't make mistakes, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Dylan?
I think, but it depends for me as to how Niall Huggins looks now that he's coming back from his injury, because obviously I know it was under a different manager, but when we brought him in, he was given the number 2 shirt. It was thought that he was going to be like our right back going forward before he got that bad injury. And I mean, even when we signed him initially, I was quite surprised because I thought a Championship team would have picked him up then to have sort of as an option. So I mean, if he hasn't sort of been hindered too badly by his injury and he's able to play the same way he could before, I wouldn't be against giving Niall Huggins a go. Obviously, we brought Hume in, but I feel like he hasn't played enough in the league below for us to just all of a sudden give him loads of starts in the Championship. So I wouldn't surprise us to see him loaned out. So I would say stick with Huggins simply because in my mind there's no name screaming out to me to bring in to sign for a right back. So I'll say Huggins.
Yeah, I think one name that I would potentially throw in there would be Nyambe from Blackburn. I think he is on a free transfer. I think he is about to leave Blackburn.
I forgot all about Huggins, to be fair. He did look really, really good away at Wigan in the Cup, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Again, you could argue he, again, is more of a wing back, I suppose. But again, we'll wait and see as to how that starts. But John, right back next season for Sunderland?
Yeah, I think the boys have made good points there. Obviously, we don't know what Huggins is going to be like. Are you going to trust Hume and Huggins? Because I don't think at the moment he does trust Hume. And like we say, we don't know what state Huggins is going to be in, even though he looked fairly decent. I think we do actually play with, obviously Sirkin and whoever's on the other side, be it Winchester or whoever, is normally there to get forward, and we sort of have a Corey Evans type to drop in. So I wouldn't be adverse to having Huggins in there and sort of playing that that role. Only other one that I'd probably like to see, and I've liked him for a while, is I think his name's Fanky Darbo at Coventry.
Coventry.
He just gets it gets up and down, and I've always liked him ever since we played them in League One. So I wouldn't be adverse to that. I think we do actually need to buy a proper, solid right back of someone who is a right back, who's at a good age, who can, that's your position, and as opposed to buying the youngsters who we need to fit in. And should we stick Luke O'Nien in there this week, or should we stick Winchester in this week? I think we're at that point where we need to target these positions and get people into those positions to be sort of settled.
Yeah. Well, Dabo did score an own goal on Football Manager last night in the FA Cup final in a 1-0 defeat for me. So that would be a bittersweet signing.
Yeah, get rid.
Moving on to the centre-backs, we'll look at both of them as opposed to individual. Obviously, I think off the top of my head, we only have two at the club at the moment. Well, one at the club at the moment with Danny Barr. Obviously, Bailey Wright's out of contract, whether he signs a new one or not. Would like to think he will. But obviously, like Tom Flanagan left, Callum Doyle's went back to Man City on loan. Could you bring him back? Maybe, who knows? But John, starting with you for the centre-backs.
For both positions, I've probably gone. I think it's a bit of a toss-up between Danny Barr and Wright in one position of centre-back. I think they both bring good experience, but I think we need someone a bit youthful and sort of quick across the ground on the other side. So I've gone with Bath or Wright after Bailey Wright's game against Peru the other night. I did like the way he sort of sat off and played the ball around, and I think that's the sort of football you get in the Championship. I think so. I wouldn't mind seeing him there. And then our old mate apparently is knocking about for a good fee in Dion Sanderson. I wouldn't mind him sort of coming back on a permanent. Again, it's a position that we need to strengthen, and we need to sort of put some money into a decent player who can make that position his own. So for me, I'd probably go Wright and Sanderson in there if it's doable.
Yeah, I think Sanderson's a good shout as well, because obviously, I mean, you don't necessarily want players to kind of play in the unnatural position, but Sanderson can cover pretty much over the back four, I think, as well. So if he was brought in, obviously, would be naturally to play at centre back, but could cover other positions as well. Dylan at centre back next season for Sunderland.
I agree with Bailey Wright filling one of the positions, and then my first choice obviously would be Sanderson. But say maybe he goes to a Sheffield United, something like that, I'd be going in for Dan Ballard from Arsenal. I'm pretty sure that they've made him available for transfer. Obviously, he's just come back off a season loan at Millwall. He's like, I think he's 22 still, and he's an absolute unit, and he would fit. He would fit the thing of at one point or another we've had the entire Northern Ireland squad playing for Sunderland, so we might as well bring another one in.
Yeah, he was a Blackpool as well, wasn't he? At loan.
He was
the season before, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I thought so. Adam, centre backs next season for Sunderland.
Yeah, same as Dylan. Definitely Daniel Ballard. He was someone I wanted before he went to Millwall at the start of the season, like you say, off his good season for Blackpool. I think alongside him, if you want, I can't decide between, again, three lads, Alfie Mawson, Johan Barbo, or Murray Wallace. I feel like there's a reason Danny Bath and Bailey Wright dropped down to League One, and it's because they're not good enough. And like I say, I'd rather just go and get players now than 6 months down the line in January find out that they're not good enough, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm with Dylan. I'd start Daniel Ballard on the right-hand side, and I'd probably lean towards Johan Barbie on the left.
Yeah, fair enough. Left back, Adam, go back to you again. A position that Sunderland will definitely, well, almost definitely sign someone in, with Dennis Serkin, the only current left back at the club. I think obviously Huggins can play there, but I think he is more of a right back. I could be wrong on that, but I think he is. So I suppose it's whether you think Serkin starts next season and we bring someone in as cover, or whether Serkin is used as cover.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't rate Serkin at all. I think he's been our worst player this season.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Who would you bring in? I'll come back to Adam. Dylan?
I don't get this. I don't get this Dennis Cirkin hate. Like
I'm with you on that one. I think, but
I think don't get me wrong. He's got a lot. He's got a lot he can improve on. But I mean, he's shown he's definitely a promising left back, and the only way for players to improve is to play games. I think also I don't want to make excuses, but I'm pretty sure he's had quite a lot of personal stuff going on in the past year, so maybe that was interfering with his sort of play throughout the season. But I think if he could like come back after a full pre-season with the team, and
I think again one thing that people forget is that is his first season of football.
Yeah, exactly. And then before, as he signed for us, people were quick to mention that he was like back pocket and Ansu Fati in youth games and things like that. So clearly,
I think Mourinho was a big fan of him as well when he was at Tottenham.
Exactly. So it's not just anyone can sort of get this sort of praise from these sort of people. So I wouldn't be against starting Dennis Cirkin. But again, if we, as I said earlier, if we've got the financial capability to bring in a very good left back and also the other positions that we need to do, then fair enough, bring someone in. But I saw that someone mentioned Matthew Sorinola, who's at obviously Union, whatever they're called in the Belgian league. And I remember he was at MK Don the season before.
Yeah, I remember his name. I was trying to think where he was at. That rings a bell. Yeah.
I remember I'm pretty sure when he played against us, I'm sure it's him I'm thinking of. He looked quite lively. He's quite quick, but I do think that he's less of a he's more of a wing back. I think he's better going forward. So it wouldn't. I wouldn't be against sort of having Cirkin starting, and then if later in the game when we need to get players forward, bring in someone like Sorinola, just stick him off the bench and have him overlapping. So maybe someone like that.
Yeah, it is Union Saint Gilloy. Don't know how you pronounce it.
I could see it in my head, but I didn't want to try and pronounce it. I just knew it was Union something.
Union SG. We'll go with.
That's what we'll call.
John at left back next season for Sunderland.
Yeah, I think I'm sticking with Cirkin. Again, I don't subscribe to the worst player we've had last season. I thought he was, like we said, he's had his ups and downs. It's his first year of football. You know, you've got to take a lot of things into consideration in that respect. You know, he's moved to a different area. He's not in his London bubble, which, you know, can, judging by his Instagram, he loves the little gangster lifestyle by the looks of it. And that is, you know, I think there's a few issues with his dad passing and that sort of thing. So you've got to give him that. But on the pitch, to me, I think he's been solid enough. He's going to have his dip in form. But I think he's one of those players that we need to let grow with us. I think for a left back, I think he's excellent in the air as well, and that's a massive bonus for us. And in terms of signings, I think we just sort of need, I don't know, I want to say an understudy. You know, maybe they're still looking at picking up the lad from Northampton Town. It wouldn't surprise me if we go down that route if we're happy to keep Cirkin at left back, you know, and just sort of get an understudy who just sort of can fluctuate in and out of the squad.
Yeah, fair enough. Adam, are you back with us at left back?
Yes, I am. Yeah, cut out there. Yeah, I'd go and get Reece Norrington-Davies from Sheffield United. He's not even their first choice, and yet he's a Wales international. He was fantastic when he was at Rochdale. You know, really stood out. Had a decent loan spell at Luton. Decent loan spell at Stoke, and again, every time he's played for Sheffield United, his data has been one of the best in the league. And I think if we were to go and pay about 3 or 4 million, we could probably get him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm going to get you to explain your Dennis Cirkin agenda.
I just think this season, when he started, he just looked really late, like not lazy, just like tired, couldn't get forward, couldn't get back, wasn't the best at defending, his cutback balls weren't the best, and they're the main things for a left back. He moved into the centre half position alongside a 3, and he looked okay. He did look okay there, and then when we went back to the 4, I think in that first leg in the Sheffield Wednesday first leg, he was absolutely abysmal, and in the second leg he was shocking. And I think even his Wembley performance wasn't the best. And I just think, again, it goes with what I'm saying. We don't have to give players the opportunity and kind of carry them. Where it comes to a point when 6 months down the line, we're like, right, we need to get rid of these because they're not good enough.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Moving on to midfield then, and Adam, I'll go back to you again. I think we have a fair share of kind of central midfielders. I wouldn't include Embleton in that because I think he's definitely more of a kind of front 3/4 player. But looking who we've got in midfield, you've got the likes of Corey Evans, Jay Matete, Dan Neil, Lugo Nyan, who you said at right back, but he obviously can play midfield. Carl Winchester as well. So whether Sunderland do bring in a midfielder or not is yet to be seen. But I suppose there will be a lot of people thinking we need at least one to come in to a starting position. But again, looking at the two as a pairing, who would you like to see for Sunderland next season?
Yeah, I am right in thinking Josh Lawrence a free agent now, is he?
Unless something's changed in the last few days, I believe so, yeah.
Right, so I definitely have him. Another player that I've picked out in the recruitment plan was two players that were together with Doncaster, Ben Sheaf and Ben Whiteman. You're probably talking that both probably cost you about 6 to 7 million. So it depends what our budget is. But I think if we can get one of them alongside Josh Lawrence, and then this is then when we're then able to bring in Conor Hurahan. He's a free as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
If we can bring them three in, if we could have a midfield next season of Conor Hurahan, Josh Lawrence, and either Sheaf or Whiteman, that's arguably one of the best midfields in the league, and you only having to pay for one of them.
Yeah. I think Redden offered Lawrence a new contract. I don't think he signed it yet, whether he will or not. I think Cardiff were interested as well.
Right.
So that'll be one to keep an eye on. Dylan, midfield 2 pairing for Sunderland next season.
Well, in terms of incomings, I agree with everything that's just been said there. But I'm in two minds because obviously we all love Dan Neil and we know he's got the potential to play at a very high level. But for me, we've either got to be starting him next season, or we just got to sell him now while his stock's still high. Because if Alex Neil doesn't rate him,
I think it could be an interesting one with Neil next season as well, because of how different the Championship players to League One. I think he will get more time on the ball, and I think that would probably suit him more than anything else. So it would be an interesting to see what happens with him. But anyway, carry on.
Exactly. Like if he gets the game time and if he gets played and if he gets given that faith of Alex Neil, then I think he'll do absolutely brilliant. But now problem is, if obviously the way it's looked since Alex Neil's come in, that he maybe doesn't see. In my mind, I think that he just wanted maybe the more rough and rugged, your Corey Evans, your Luke O'Neill, just to get us over that final hurdle at the end of the season. That's the way I saw it. But if it turns out that Alex Neil just doesn't rate him that much, then I'd just get rid of him because his stock's still high. Like people are going to, it's like his good performances from the start of the season are still fresh in their memory of potential suitors, and we could probably still get a few million from now. Obviously, he's been linked to your Burnleys, your Aston Villas. So if we're not going to utilise him ourselves, I'd sell him while his stock's still high. But that being said, I would like to see him play regularly for us, and then obviously bring in your Whitemans, your Hurahans to play alongside him.
Yeah. I think Hurahan's definitely the one I would be happy to see come in more than anyone else. But John, again, midfield pairing next season.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely be on board with Hurahan. A bit of experience in there as well. Playing the Premier League for quite a while as well. Again, I agree with Dan Neil. I think it's a different league in the Championship, and I think we're going to get a lot more time on the ball. And he's the sort of player we want. I don't think Luke O'Neill, Brazilian there, Luke O'Neill. I don't think he or Corey Evans is going to give us maybe what we need on the ball. So I think Neil's I personally think that Neil goes ahead of those two. Only other one that, the guys probably know more than I do about other players in the Championship, because it's literally I'll just focus on Sunderland alone. But I think one player we are sort of undercutting maybe is Jay Matete in there. I think he's done okay. Yeah, he's still young, but I think he's done okay. I think we bought him in the sense that when we get promoted, I think he is much more suited to a Championship game. Obviously, you get a lot more time on the ball. He sort of draws players in, and then when he does release it properly, I think it does really work. I think if you've got him, I don't want to say ideally, but I wouldn't mind seeing him and Neil play together and sort of get Matete to sit in while Neil sort of plays. But then again, I do think we do still need that bit of street smart in sort of a Hurahan sort of type player, so that the others can, sort of your wingers and your forwards can actually go off and play whilst, sort of keeping the back door tight, which I think that's a big thing for Alex Neil.
Yeah. Moving on to the attacking three behind the striker. In terms of right wing, John, we'll start with you. I don't actually think we have anyone at the club that can play there at the moment.
Maybe Diaku.
Oh yeah, Diaku, obviously, yeah, forgot about him. I think that's the only one at the minute. Obviously, potentially you could throw the likes of Embleton in there, but probably a slightly unnatural position for them. But who would you start right wing for Sunderland next season, or who would you bring in to play there?
I think the easy one we've got to say is obviously Patrick Roberts. You would like to think we're at the front of the queue on that one, and his performances sort of last sort of 5-6 games. If he can replicate that, and we can get that out of him, I think that's a no-brainer on the wing. And Diaku, I don't think he's going to start. Neil hasn't fancied him at all. But sort of the obligation to sign him is, we have to sign him. So I think he'll be a good squad player for the Championship. Again, you get a lot more space. I think, again, that's what he's used to. He's not used to a rugged, at Bayern Munich, they're not going to play sort of League One standard football. So, yeah, probably for me, Roberts and Diaku down that wing. I think they probably both, again, people won't like me saying this, but they both probably get in ahead of Lyndon Gooch. Which would mean if we do have those two, then there isn't really a place for Gooch in the team then, or the squad.
Yeah, Dylan, right wing next season for Sunderland.
I'm going to be boring and just say Patrick Roberts. I hope that he signs a new deal. I mean, I know he was a bit stop-start from when he come in towards the end of the season, but for a player who's had countless loans in the past, I'd say 5 years.
You've got to remember as well, when he came into Sunderland, he'd hardly played football, I think, for the last year.
Yeah, exactly. He was where was it? Was it Troyes in France, which is obviously like Man City's like sister club or something like that. So he was just sent there for the crack by the looks of it. And then he's come in, and I think we've said before in here, he's just one of those players who just needs to stay somewhere for a good period of time and have managers who puts his arm around him, gets the best out of him. And I think Alex Neil's starting to do that with him. And I mean, obviously he's been in the Championship before with Middlesbrough, which was obviously less successful than his Derby spell. But according to the Derby fans, he was the absolute bollocks when he was there. So I mean, I don't see why he can't turn it on again and just get some more quality performances in the Championship. I mean, he's come through. Like, he's been at Man City for like God knows how long. They don't persist with like just anybody. You know what I mean? They would have got rid of him years ago if he wasn't at least a decent player. Yeah.
So would you be bringing someone in as backup, or do you think a right side midfield with, if Gooch, if he signs, behind Diaku, behind Roberts?
No, I think we do have to bring someone in. Maybe like I don't. Yeah, Roberts will be my starter, so I'll maybe go get someone like Marcus Harness as a backup because he's just rapid and direct. I quite like him.
Yeah, fair enough. Adam, at right wing next season.
Yeah, again, probably he's unpopular amongst you lads, but I wouldn't have even offered. I wouldn't be bothered about Patrick Roberts going at all. Again, I think he was one of our worst performers towards the end of the season. I'd go and maybe he's putting a little bid for Josh Bowler at Blackpool. Ricky Dembele at Bournemouth, but again, he probably wants to go and play in the Premier League, so he probably won't leave. Or there's obviously I've spoke before about Seaman Nordley in Norway, some of the best attacking data in Europe this last season, and again you could probably get him for less than £1 million. And another lad that's playing in Latvia at the moment is called Emerson Diocletiano, a Brazilian lad.
It's a great name.
Yeah, again, really good player. I think if we can go and get someone like that, just a bit outside the box, a bit exciting, then that would be ideal. Obviously, there's also Ebi Wobi at I butchered his name then. Ebi Wobi at Derby. Again, he was in my recruitment plan, but about yesterday I saw that Man United are actually interested in him, so maybe do at the buy and then loan him back, maybe.
Yeah, interesting. I think we
Charlie
definitely have to name this.
On a free, by the way, I just thought I'd mention.
Who's that again, sorry?
Charlie Musonda on a free.
Charlie Musonda.
Made a glass, but I'd absolutely love that. He was offered to play Chelsea for free, so let's give him like a tenner a week. And let's let him stay on Ross Stewart's sofa and just bring him in.
Yeah, that'd be unbelievable. I do think this podcast is going to have to be called Controversial Opinions after what Adam's been saying. But anyway, attacking midfield, Adam, I'll go with you. Obviously, 2 at the club at the moment who can kind of naturally play there in Pritchard and Embleton. For me, I think Pritchard is the one that will be starting there, and I don't really see him not starting really next season, but be interested to see what people say about that.
No, I'm with you. I think there's only a handful of players that I'd put and have certainty that they'd make the step up, and it's Pritchard's definitely one of them. I suppose Houhan could also play that role. You've also got Embleton. I don't think I think that's probably the position that we'll least need to purchase a player for.
Yeah.
That attacking midfielder role. But Pritchard starts for me, I think.
Yeah. Dylan?
I agree on Pritchard starting, and then in terms of bringing in someone who could maybe rotate, I don't know how gettable he would be, but I quite like the look of Ruben Colwill from Cardiff. Like, I'm pretty sure he was their joint top scorer last season, obviously because Kiefer Moore left halfway through. He finished like joint top scorer, but like barely starting games. It's like he says here he was like in the starting 11 like 33% of the time, so he's only going to start 1 in 3 games.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's quite different to Pritchard in terms of like obviously Pritchard's like diminutive, he's quite like agile, and then Colwell's like 6'2", something like that. So I think just to have a different option, a bit of a more physical option who we can bring on against the bigger lads, I think would be good. So if he's available, which I doubt, to be fair, I doubt they'd be willing to sell him. But if we can give them the money to get him out, I would love to see Ruben Colwill.
Yeah. I think one name that I'll throw in there that I don't actually think anyone's really mentioned before, and I think probably is it unrealistic? I don't know, but Louis Sibley from Derby could be an interesting one to see what happens with. Obviously, Derby back in League One now. I think he's still only a young player. I'm not entirely sure how old he is, early 20s, I think. But I'd be surprised if he stays in League One next season. That is definitely a name that I would throw in there. John?
Yeah, Pritchard. I think he's pretty much nailed on with his, how he's been this season. Embleton probably the understudy. I think Embleton's probably a player that he's not going to be first choice over Pritchard. But if we're going to the 5 sub rule, then he's sort of a good player to be able to, to bring on. Only other one maybe you could think about is, who I was thinking of is maybe Tom Lawrence from Derby. I'm sure you could exploit that situation. Again, he's done fairly well in a really poor and struggling team. But like the guys have said, I think we're pretty well stocked in there. We can't really move Pritchard and Embleton out of that at the moment, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Left wing again, John, we'll go back to you. Aidan McGeady is moving on. I think he looks like he's going to be going to Hibs, which I think Lee Johnson's there now, isn't he? So he'll be joining back up with him. Obviously, Jack Clark at the moment looks to be going back to Tottenham after his loan spell. So in terms of wingers, again, kind of short on that side. So who would you be bringing in, John? And, how many, I suppose, as well?
Well, I think we do need to. We need to keep that width out there. I wouldn't mind signing Jack Clark again. Again, if it's possible. I'm sure Tottenham are some of the worst people to deal with transfer wise.
Absolutely.
So it's maybe one they're looking at, but maybe not so. I think there's talk of Josh Murphy, who's just left Cardiff. I think he'd probably be, he's got a lot of pace. So he could be, if we can get him on free.
Brings a new chant as well if we signed him, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Get rid of the Lee Howie chant.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'd probably take Murphy on a free. That frees up some money to maybe spend elsewhere. But I think you've got to be looking at 2, and I wouldn't I wouldn't mind both. To be fair, Murphy and Clark, and you can play them on either wings as well. They're very interchangeable. So are Roberts and Dayaka if you've got them on the other sides. I'm sure the club will pull something out of the bag. Who, they've got a way of knowing all the academy teams and pulling out your Callum Doyles and Sirkins, and I think there'll be a few of that, especially for me, where they've signed and I've never even heard of them before. I think we've got to expect sort of 2 or 3 of those signings to come in.
Yeah, left wing for you, Dylan.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if any of you have just seen the group chat now, but apparently Hull have 3 million for Scott Twine. So like, I doubt they would accept that. But if that's the sort of region of the fee that he's available for, because I thought it would have been much more, then I'd be going in for Scott Twine because he can shoot from anywhere and it just goes in. It's like, when you go on FIFA and you put your shot accuracy up to 99 and then just score like scorpion kicks from the halfway line, and that's Scott Twine's just the real life version of that. So I would like to see him, but then obviously there's the likes of Tom Lawrence, he's available on a free, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, well, to be fair, he's got to be because Derby is skin. So yeah, I'd say Tom Lawrence or someone like Scott Twine. I wouldn't mind seeing him for us next season.
Yeah, Adam, on to you. And
Yeah.
I'm waiting for this unpopular opinion on Jack Clark now for you, so don't disappoint.
I'll be honest. I don't rate Jack Clark. I'm not. I don't. I think our wingers towards the end of the season were 2 worst players last season, and thankfully they came good for about 5 seconds away at Sheffield Wednesday, to get us to the final. But no, again, Jack Clark, I wouldn't have him back. I'd definitely go for Tom Lawrence on a free, 100%.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on to striker again, a position that Sunderland will look to bring at least 1, possibly 2, possibly 3, depending what happens with Ross Stewart over the summer. I've seen the likes of Nathan Broadhead has went back to Everton. He's been linked with a move back. Obviously, his injuries, over the season have obviously been brought into question, which I don't think is too much of a concern, to be honest, because I think I said this at the time and I still kind of stand by it. I don't think he is an injury-prone player. I think he was rushed back on 2 different occasions. You could see in the final and in the playoff games that he just didn't look fit. So I don't think his injuries are too much of a concern. Whether he comes in or not, I'm not sure. But up front for Sunderland next season, Adam?
Yeah, again, someone who was in my recruitment plan and we've been linked with this morning, Cameron Archer.
Yeah.
Now, what's he called? Ryan Lowe said that he had a chat with Archer towards the end of last season, and Archer said to him that if it was a case of going back to the Championship, Preston are the only club he'd go to. Now, obviously, if that's true, then fair enough, but I can't see him wanting to go to Preston over us.
Yeah.
Other options, I don't think we could do no harm in getting David McGoldrick as a backup, someone just to chase and hassle defenders for a bit, and then.
See, I think that is the one that I would have to disagree on for me.
Really, not.
I think he's what is he turning 35 this year? I think.
No, this is literally just for like a backup strike, like someone to sit on the bench all the time and just come on like now and again. I'm not saying I'd start him, nowhere near that. But I think if we've only got 1 striker in Ross Stewart and we need to sign someone, then obviously you've got Stewart, you've got Archer who'll be a starter. I'd go and get Nathan Broadhead, and then just to have another striker there, I wouldn't say no to McGoldrick, like I say. And then you've got Dwight Gale as well. If we could maybe get him, is he a free or would he be a case of having to loan him or sign him?
I think it would be a loan because I think he signed a new contract last season. I think it was.
Oh, fair enough. I'd definitely try and get him on loan then.
I'll have to double check that, and I will do as I check. But Dylan, up front for Sunderland next season?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, as with David McGoldrick, I would definitely give him a 2-year deal, never play him at all till we get promoted, and then play him against Man United and he'll score because that's the only team that he's ever scored against. I'm certain of it. But no, it would definitely. I definitely agree on Caminage. I would love to see him in red and white next season. I remember we were very loosely linked with him on loan in January before he went to Preston. I think it was us and Portsmouth got linked with him. So I've had a look. I've been keeping an eye on how he's been doing. I've looked at some of his highlights and that, as I'm sure everyone has. And he just looks like a brilliant Championship striker. And I swear he's just turned 20. Is it 21?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but the
Might
thing
even be
is,
younger than that, to be fair.
my
He's
problem.
21 next month.
21 next month. Okay, that's good. But just my only, not even my problem, just my worry about trying to sign someone like that is I feel like he doesn't come to us unless he's guaranteed to pretty much start every game. And I think obviously if we're playing one up front, which we have been doing, Ross Stewart's not gonna we're not gonna drop Ross Stewart for Cameron Archer. So it's a tough one. I want to see Cameron Archer, but I don't think we could get him unless he was guaranteed that sort of game time. So maybe
there was a few times last season for Preston. Funny enough, random, but I was at his very first game for Preston away to West Brom when he came on and scored near the end. And there was a few times last season where he was playing kind of on the left because you'd have like Ched Evans and Emil Rees up front, and then Cameron Archer on the left. And it made me think similar role to what Nathan Broadhead was doing for us last season. He was a striker, but he understood that he couldn't knock Ross Stewart out the number 9 position. So, he played a bit wide. But the other thing with Preston last season, I ran some data analysis on them before, and the games that Emil Rees and Archer started up front together, if that was the partnership for them all season, they'd have finished in the playoffs. And I think with Ross Stewart's a bit similar to Rees, like a tall holder player. I think Ross Stewart's far better, by the way. If we were to play a 2 up front with Archer and Stewart, that would cause absolute chaos next season.
Yeah.
See, I'm all for us playing it like a 4-4-2, but then the only problem with that is then where does Pritchard go? Does he come on? Does he play? Because I don't think
a 3-5-2 and play Pritchard behind them.
That would be that's a shout actually. Yeah, no, that'd be good.
Yeah. And I just checked. Dwight Gale signed a 3-year contract last year. Don't know why.
That's such a strange move.
It is.
Unless they know that they could maybe get about 8 million out of a championship club for him. That's the only thought process behind it, truly.
Yeah, but he is under contract for another 2 years at Newcastle. Interestingly enough, so if he was to sign,
did he not sign that before the takeover got put through? So when they were looking very likely to get relegated, and then he scores about 70 goals a season. So maybe his scenario.
It has to have been that, hasn't it?
I'm trying to think when the takeover went through because it was around
January, wasn't it?
It was just before January. It was about November, December time, I'm sure.
I'll have a look because it was when they played Spurs at home.
I think it was exactly a year ago. Not necessarily on this day, obviously, but it was June last year, I think, that he signed a 3-year contract with Newcastle.
Right, and the takeover the first game after the takeover was the 17th of October. So yeah, it must have been what Dylan said there.
Yeah. Either way, a 3-year contract is very interesting. But anyway, moving on to last but not least, John, up front for Sunderland next season.
Yeah, I think we've got to go with Ross Stewart. It does concern me, Nathan Broadhead's injury record. That is a bit where I know he probably was rushed back at the end. If you can, I'd probably take him if we're going to sign 2 strikers, because I think there's going to be times in games, or there's going to be games where we're going to have to start 2 up front. I think sometimes, so you're going to need that extra one. I wouldn't be against, McGoldrick as sort of a third. Sort of a third striker. I'm sure there's a few others knocking about. I wouldn't mind Lawrence Shankland to come in. I think he did well before he went abroad.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we could probably get him back for very little. But if you are going to sign Broadhead or McGoldrick, I think you probably do take an Archer or that type of sort of young loan as the third one, just as they're still learning. So we, in games we can actually change it up and not just sort of be one-dimensional. So yeah, there's a range of options out there, and I'm sure they're all being explored as we speak.
Yeah. Just one last name. Go on. One last name that I forgot about: Reece Healy from Toulouse.
Oh yes.
When he was at MK Dons, I thought he was the best striker in the league, and again, he's someone that can play on the left as well. So yeah, I think we could probably get him for about 3-4 million as well.
Yeah. Obviously, it all depends how much Sunderland have to spend.
Yeah, that's it.
In the summer, if anything at all. I think we will have a decent budget to kind of, like Adam said right at the start, just to kick on and hopefully challenge for something next season. Another name that I'll just throw in there to see what people think. He hasn't been linked. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get linked just because of pure lazy journalism. But obviously, Bordeaux were relegated to the 3rd division of France. Recently, I think it might have been yesterday or the day before that was confirmed. Obviously, Josh Madge is playing there now. I can't imagine he's going to be staying in the 3rd division. Is he a player that would be welcome back at Sunderland? Obviously, his first season, I think he scored on his debut in the Championship, came down to League One with us when we got relegated. I think it was 17 goals he scored in that season, and it looked the player really. He played for Fulham in the Premier League, scored a couple of goals here and there. I'm not entirely sure how he got on at Stoke because I didn't really pay too much attention that season in the Championship. But if he was linked, if he was an option, would he be a player that you'd consider bringing in as a starter, or maybe a backup to Stewart?
For me personally, not a chance.
Go on, you boys go.
Nah, he's turned his back on us once. I wouldn't give him that opportunity to come back here. Not a chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. If your missus cheated on you, you wouldn't fucking let her back in because she said she loved you again. You know what I mean? I think
depends who it was with her.
I don't wish ill on him, even though I've said before that I hope he has a shit career. But I take that back. I think he should now. I think he should go to the Netherlands. I think you do well in the Eredivisie, somewhere like that. Do what like the likes of Donny and Marlon do. Just go and rebuild their careers in a foreign league, and then could maybe come back to England in a few years' time. But I wouldn't have him back here simply because of the way that he left.
Yeah, fair enough, John. Would you be against him coming back?
Yeah, 100%. Like the boys have said, I know he was young. I'm sure he was naive and he's learned his lesson. But yeah, not for me. You only get one chance. I'm sure if he'd have stayed, I think it'd have been different for him and us. But yeah, you burnt your bridge. So
to be honest, I think if he'd stayed, would have been doing this podcast 3 years earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he regrets it as well. So even though he lives in a nice part of the world, or where his contract is in Bordeaux, I'm sure it's a lovely place to live and it's good money and all that lot. But I'm sure we'd rather have the better career. And he looked okay at Fulham. So think of what he'd done if he'd have finished with us. We could have even sold him at the end of that or whatever. But it was shit from us, shit from him. But yeah, we don't want him back. Thanks.
Yeah, you're trying to say Pennywell and Hendon don't have the same appeal as Bordeaux?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Fair enough. I don't think I'll disagree with that. But last but not least, obviously them names that we've mentioned, they might sign, they might not sign, they might never get linked. Some of them already have. So it's a case of a waiting game, I suppose, to see who Sunderland bring in, who stays at the club, and again, just kind of what happens with the club over the next few weeks, next few months. The takeover's still kind of up in the air. I say takeover in inverted commas because it's kind of more of a, buying the shares out of Donald and Methven. So there's a lot to happen. And obviously we don't know how the squad will line up. But let's say we brought in some of the players that we've mentioned there. What would be a realistic finish for Sunderland next season? What would be a realistic target for Alex Neil and Sunderland to look for in the Championship? John, I'll start with you.
I think personally for me, I think it has to be first and foremost is the consolidation. I think you've got to see where you are maybe Christmas time. If we're knocking about that sort of 10th, 11th place, can we strengthen in January? We hopefully should have the power to, and kick on. And then it's can we make a late surge? I think that's the pragmatic approach. And then ultimately, there's no one really in the league that scares me. As long as we get things right off the pitch, in the background, I don't see any reason why we can't just have a good old crack at at least the playoffs. I'd say, anything less than that, I think is quite unambitious.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Dylan.
I completely agree with what John just said there. Like, as far I've said it before, and I know they've since been relegated, but the fact that Barnsley went up and managed to get playoffs, especially with that squad. I know their manager at the time did absolute wonders, but the point I'm making is the fact that a team like that can go up and get playoffs. And obviously we've seen Luton go. It wasn't straight, but Luton have put themselves as a top half Championship team in the past 2 years. There's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to do the same. And I mean, especially obviously, even the teams that have come down, there's a lot of rebuilding having to be done. Obviously,
I think
Watford-
Huddersfield are a good team to look at as well, because obviously they got, I think it was the playoff final they got to, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think they had the lowest budget in the league last season.
Well, their best player last season was someone they pulled from non-league. That's Sober Thomas. So I mean, it just shows that you don't even have to spend loads of money and stuff like that. You just need to be smart with your signings, be savvy, and bring in people who can do a job. And why not? Let's just go for it. Let's just get promoted. Tom Flanagan said when he signed that new contract 2 years ago that there's no reason why we can't get back-to-back promotions. So maybe he'll have the last laugh when we do it.
Yeah, hopefully so. And last but not least, Adam, a realistic target for Sunderland next season if some of the players mentioned were to come in.
Definitely top half. Honestly, I think if obviously it's never going to happen, but I think if all the players that we've said kind of today were to sign, there's no reason why we couldn't be around 8th next season. Dylan said about Barnsley getting the playoffs and said, oh, but they had a brilliant manager. I think people are sometimes forgetting. I think we have got top 5 best manager in the Championship next season.
Yeah.
Personally, in Alex Neil. I think he's fantastic, and I think that if everything goes to plan, you could see us top half.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Hopefully so. Hopefully we win the league. Let's do it. Another trip to Wembley wouldn't be bad. But we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, that is all the time for today. I'm sure we'll have another podcast out in the future talking about, potential transfers or links, or hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I can't remember the time frame that we put on it. We'd have a little bit more to talk about regarding the, again, inverted commas, takeover. Hopefully that comes out and hopefully it goes better than how it sounds at the moment, because it does sound like a bit of a catastrophe at the moment, but we'll see. But anyway, until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.